Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Keenan.
Let's stop talking so we can listen to the rest of that Pixie song. Heidi can look into the future.
And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and this show is the dance party I've been waiting for.
Oh, and we hope that you're dancing out there, everybody, as you join us here on another week of HMP. And we're glad to have you, man. We're glad to have everybody that listens to this show week in and week out. We couldn't do this without you, and we couldn't do it without you guys, helping us out at patreon.com/HMP. We really appreciate anybody who goes and helps us out, gets a little pre-show, post-show, all that kind of good stuff. And Bruce and I have decided that we're going to, once we get a couple more episodes in, we're going to review that Alex Inc. show that's on NBC that talks about what's his nose there from Scrubs?
Zach Braff?
Zach Braff plays a podcaster, and it's the most unrealistic podcasting stuff you'll ever see in your entire life. We're going to review that.
Is he in his studio?
Oh, it's worse than that, my friend. It's worse than that.
It's based on what, Gimli Media? I mean, it's based on a real person.
Yeah. No real person. Listen, we'll discuss how real all of this stuff is on that.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm a big fan of Scrubs, and I have been known to podcast.
You've been known to podcast, so we're going to talk about that. And how do you get that? You head on over to patreon.com/HMP and join up today. We appreciate all of you fine people.
You don't say.
And yeah, man, it's I can't wait to talk about that thing. Anyways, it's angering me already, and I haven't even done it yet. Speaking of things that don't anger me, I am not angered. When people head on down to the iTunes and drop us a 5-star review, aka a humdinger. Been some time. This one's from EagleFord_RE. I think that's wasn't that a car? No, that's car
it's my favorite car.
the Eagle Ford RE. Now with
half truck, half car. We call it a tar.
And it's entitled Super Smart. This may be for a different podcast. I'm not sure what's going on. And it reads as follows: as an old saying goes, in order to educate, one must first entertain. These guys achieve this superbly in a very smart way. Their enthusiasm is unmatched. Keep up the great job, guys. That is from EagleFord_RE. Eagle Ford, you are an amazing person. We thank you for your 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger. And we'd appreciate it if any of you would go down and drop that 5-star review, man. We really appreciate it. We've even had people who were like, look, man, I'm not on Apple stuff. I hate Apple. Apple can burn in 1,000 fiery deaths, but I still registered through on a 5-star review, and then I burnt that account to the ground. Hey, that still counts, baby. It still counts. So, so we'll take it.
It's our favorite kind of review.
We'll take it any way that you can do it. And, of course, hey, if you can't do that, head on to patreon.com/HMP. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and open up. It's been a hot second here, but we love getting them. Let's listen to the old HMP mailbag, shall we?
Bale's here.
Well, we dig deep in the old HMP mailbag here, and we've got one from Anonymous. Hey guys, first and foremost, I wanted to say thank you for putting in a ton of work that doesn't get monetary recognition it deserves. I hope this helps. I did not write this, by the by. I get accused of that, just going, hey. Right now, and this happens to deal somewhat with Jessica Jones of what we talked about last week, and I think it kind of dovetails into this week as well. Right now, I am in a psychiatric partial hospitalization program for depression, anxiety, and PTSD. One of the things that gets me through the hour-long commutes to the hospital on mass transit is your voices once a week. It's not easy for me, but having the voices of 3 guys who are clearly friends and love discussing movies in my headphones is a way to look forward to what might be a very unpleasant day of medical and psychological therapies. I've been thinking about the Jessica Jones coverage a bunch because I really like this season. Not as much as the first season, but that was an easy story to tell. First, when you all wanted the Wizard to be in the show, I busted out laughing. More white nerdy dudes. That's what TV is missing. Hey, first off,
Agreed, Anonymous. Agreed.
I did like the character for a bit, but it would have been way too old by the third time.
Never, impossible.
Never!
I understand why people might not have liked seeing how Jessica ended up being a codependent mess, since it meant Trish had to have been an awful person at some point. But if Trish had always been the victim, that would be boring. Trish's drive to be the most important person was a great character expansion. It made sense. Insanely poetic timing or good choice with such a strong hashtag MeToo nod and the skeezy child rapist director. Very true on that one. I can't believe we didn't touch on that, but that was a great scene.
We should have.
Yeah, we should have.
The conflict that she had with Simpson trying to do what was right and was the face of an abused woman coping with the fact that the abuser wasn't in control of himself because of outside forces. And her being an addict and using people once she slipped into the addiction role again made sense. That is true.
Yep.
I wanted to know more about Malcolm's family. I agree with Sean that Malcolm seems evil now. Jessica pulled him out of addiction and got him away from Kilgrave. She literally saved his life. She took him in and made him his associate after he forced her to teach him how to be a PI for free. As for the idea that Kilgrave went away just because we, the audience, didn't see him, ... This is just me, but I assume he's always there for her. Louder and quieter, not based necessarily on how insane her life is. The worst my PTSD doesn't happen when things are at their worst in my life every time. Often it Often it happens after the fact. Similarly, when we see the Jessica crawl into the at her deepest, we see her crawl into the bottle. I figured it was like seeing the way Matt Murdock sees in the first season of Daredevil. You get a glimpse of what it's like to have PTSD, but they're not going to do it for the entire show. For starters, given what he did to her, it would be massively disturbing because there would be a lot of I'm going to clean this up a little bit, attack flashbacks involved. And if not, that would be a disservice to what it is to having that condition. Seeing Reba die again would also be very different now that we know that character from Luke Cage. I get that Tennant is fun to see, but having him there takes away from the fact that this show is about Jessica, not about one of Kilgrave's victims. Now, I agree that I understand the sentiment behind that. To me, the biggest thing was I think we almost, for those of us that haven't had that sort of experience, we almost need that constant, Kilgrave there, in my opinion, to see how pervasive something like that is. Because I think if the character kept going on and on throughout the entire thing, you could really start to see the crazy start to happen, because this is something that would not let up. So that's my opinion. Also, getting back to the letter. Also, I know a lot of people didn't like Jessica going along with her mom killing that guard. Ask yourself if you've ever had one person left on Earth whom you knew and loved you more than anyone else, someone you never thought you'd see again, and that person was being tortured. What would you do to stop it? Because if I had Jessica's powers and skills, I'd take more mental anguish for that person. And look,
I can't disagree with that.
That's it. I think we all would. And look what I'm doing, and look what I'm doing for fun every weekday. I hope you guys have fun with Legion for obvious reasons. I haven't had time to see it yet, but I hope you all like it. I won't listen until I've seen the episodes myself, because it's a show that I like a lot. Thanks for the stories and levity, guys. What you do means a lot to a lot of us. Big hugs. Best Dr. Dan Do. That doesn't seem right. I think that Anonymous put that in there for what we call funsies. Wouldn't that be hilarious?
I'd like to just start off by saying I hope we don't disappoint. I hope we continue to give you an hour that's at least better than listening to silence for an hour, which I have my doubts about some of our shows, but that's what I hope we can do for you at the very least. Thank you so much for listening. Agree. Thank you so much for writing that letter. And one thing I love about the breadth of superhero and comic book properties that we have available now is that there is something to connect with different folks. Different people can connect with different properties on a different level. I think that all three of us here consider ourselves creative people, and it's always nice to know that even if everyone doesn't like what your work is, at least there are some folks out there that will connect with it. And I'm so glad that you enjoyed the show, that it was there for you. I'm glad that even though maybe it didn't connect with us as well as it did with you, that you at least enjoyed our discussion about it.
Yeah, and everything that Bruce just said, just spoken even better than he speaks. Actually, that was really well put, Bruce. I'm of the same camp. I think that it becomes a slog after a while. Where is anyone listening? Is anyone listening to this stupid show of ours? And and emails like this really put it into perspective. Where you're like, this is special. This is unique. What we've fallen backwards into here, quite frankly. Yeah. I mean, when we first talked about doing the show, that at least what I thought we would get like maybe 100 people listening to the show and they would like it, but that's not what happened. and so to get a letter like this, it really does mean way more than you even think. And I'm very glad that we're able to give you something as well, because sometimes it's just like you're speaking into the void. At least that's how it feels to me. And so to know that you're listening and to know that you're enjoying it, even though I stutter constantly these days, to add to the mayhem of our stupidity. Anonymous, thank you very much for writing to us, and we hope that this is helping in some way. Yeah.
I think that's a good album name for us too, The Mayhem of Our Stupidity. I like
that. Anonymous, keep up the good work, trying to get yourself more comfortable with life, man or lady. I've had a lot of secondhand experience with what you're going through, so I'm proud of you, man or lady, and keep up the good work. You're doing the right thing.
Please.
Yeah, it's never tough, and that's what I say. At the end of the day, I just want to put out a nice, fun product for people to have, to be able to get away from that. Because when I started before I started listening to podcasts, that's what I loved, because I was working overnights and stuff, and I just had a lot of time to kill. Things were very boring, no one to talk to because it was a graveyard shift, and I just threw on podcasts and stuff, and it was like sitting with friends and whatnot. And so I that's how I kind of dived into podcasts, and then eventually into doing them myself. And we like I said, we see the download numbers are there, but it's always nice to, actually hear back from people, whether the show makes a good experience. And hey, every now and then we might get like an actual Dr. Dan do to really spice up the program a little bit. We need some more hate. No, that's not kidding. I'm kidding. I don't want more hate.
Please don't. I'll tell you what. When you said that it was written by Anonymous, I was girding my loins, getting ready, because I was like, oh boy, here we go. Here we go.
And time to rip these guys yet another one. But we do thank you and everyone who has written to us in the past. And if you'd like to write to us, we'd love to read those on the air, man. Do us a favor. Drop us a line at hereamoviepodcast@gmail.com. We'd really appreciate that. Let's close up the old H&P mailbag.
Bale's here.
Alrighty, it is about that time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the official trailer for Legion Season 2. If the iPad wants to start. Hold on. Well, we'll edit this portion out, won't we?
No, you won't. I know you too well.
Hello?
Here this time.
What are you hiding? We are gone.
Can we go home now? Where you been?
No! What are you hiding?
I remembered trees and dancing.
We'll talk later.
Okay.
After you left, we joined Division 3, started working together to fight our real enemy.
The Shadow King.
We think he's infecting people somehow. all die eventually. But the real tragedy is forgetting to live.
It's coming.
What's coming?
The end of everything.
Do you not feel? Do you not feel?
She lives in the future you're going to destroy. And when you do, she will cease to exist.
I love you.
Love isn't gonna save us.
You still trust him?
He's my man.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Legion Season 2. As we've said before, this is going to be the first 2 episodes of Legion, and for those of you that might be new to Hero Movie Podcast, we are going to be spoiling everything that happens in those first 2 episodes, and of course probably some things that happened in Season 1, and we'll talk about why you probably should have already watched Season 1 to begin with, but we've got to get down to one of the more important questions on this here program.
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
Bruce, as we were talking about in the beginning, but while we were, in the pre-show here and everything, this might be a little bit difficult for you, but frankly, I think you're up to the challenge. What do you got?
Well, I'll start off by saying what I said in the pre-show. It is very difficult to do a third comic book connection for a show with exactly 2 comic book characters. But I'm a man of letters. Did you know that? Did you know that I'm a man of letters? I'm well versed in many academic areas. And
you're
as
like
such,
you're like the Thomas Jefferson of crappy superhero stuff.
Actually, I'm more like the George Jefferson, but I'll take it. but Zhang Zhao, often known as Master Zhang, was an influential Chinese philosopher who lived around the 4th century BC during the Warring States period of China, a period corresponding to the summit of Chinese philosophy, the 100 schools of thought. He is credited with writing, in part or in whole, a work known by his name, the Zhangji, which is one of the foundational texts of Taoism. He wrote the Cutting Open Satchels to satirize and expose the disciples of Confucius for the idiots that they are. King Wei of Chu, having heard of the ability of Zhang Zhao, sent messengers with large gifts to bring him to his court, and promising also that he would make him his chief minister. Cheng Zi, however, only laughed and said to them, 1,000 ounces of silver are a great gain to me, and to be a high noble and minister is a most honorable position. But have you not seen the victim ox for the border sacrifice? It is carefully fed for several years and robed with rich embroidery that it may be fit to enter the grand temple. When the time comes for it to do so, it would prefer to be a little pig, but it cannot get to be so. Go away quickly. Do not soil me with your presence. I had rather amuse and enjoy myself in the midst of a filthy ditch than be subject to the rules and restrictions in the court of a sovereign. How about that, Adam? That sounds like something you would say.
It's just, if you're going to say that everything that I say before I say it, Bruce, I don't know that we can have much of a show.
Get out of his head.
Well, Zhao commented on the dream argument. The dream argument is the postulation that the act of dreaming provides preliminary evidence that the senses we trust to distinguish reality from illusion should not be fully trusted. And therefore, any state that is dependent on our senses should at the very least be carefully examined and rigorously tested to determine whether it is, in fact, reality. While people dream, they usually do not realize they are dreaming, and if they do, it is called a lucid dream. This has led philosophers to wonder whether one could actually be dreaming constantly instead of being in waking reality, or at least that one cannot be certain at any given point in time that one is not dreaming. In the West, this philosophical puzzle was referred to by Plato and Aristotle. Having received serious attention in René Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy, the dream argument has become one of the most prominent skeptical hypotheses, which clearly has an archetype and elements of Plato's allegory of the cave. This type of argument is well known as Zhangji dreamed he was a butterfly. Now is it making sense, guys?
Oh, well,
finally, he's wrapping it up.
The dream argument features widely in Mahayana Buddhist and Tibetan Buddhist thought. A paradox concerning dreams and the nature of reality was described by the British writer Eric Bond Hutton in 1989. As a child, Hutton often had lucid dreams in which everything seemed as real as in waking life. This led him to wonder whether life itself was a dream, even whether he existed only in somebody else's dream. Sometimes he had pre-lucid dreams, in which more often than not he concluded he was awake. Such dreams disturbed him greatly, but one day he came up with a magic formula for use in them. If I find myself asking, am I dreaming? It proves I am, for the question would never occur to me in waking life. Yet, such is the nature of dreams. He could never recall it when he needed to. Many years later, when he wrote a piece about solipsism and his childhood interest in dreams, he was struck by a contradiction in his earlier reasoning. True, asking oneself, am I dreaming, in a dream would seem to prove one is. Yet that is precisely what he had often asked himself in waking life. Therein lay a paradox. What was he to conclude? That it does not prove one is dreaming, or that life really is a dream? So I suppose it stands to reason that in a medium such as comic book stories, which frequently question the nature of reality, that Zhang Zhou must inevitably become a character, as he did oh so briefly here in Legion.
You know.
So anyway, brother, here's Wonderwall.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, you're just that's exactly what they say just before we hit the VH1 acoustic set to tell you about little storytellers action.
Yeah,
just before we hit you up with this.
It's going to be the day, huh?
Yeah, what do you think,
Bruce? Bruce, it's so funny, man, because it goes back and forth with me where I'm I'm probably almost as smart as Bruce is. And then something like this, you drop something like this, and it's like, nope, not even close. All right, you're a dummy again. It's fine. Totally fine.
See, so that's anyway, why you got to sit over here in the dumb section with me. I just go like, look, everybody's pretty much going to be better than me. It's a smart way to go about it.
That's the story of the guy that the butterfly story was based on in the first episode.
Oh, now, okay, I see.
So, as I was saying, this is, out of all the television programs that we've done, I think this one is the most, boy, you better have watched season 1 before you start watching season 2, boy, because you are going to be confused. You'll be confused if you've seen season 1.
I was going to say, let me just back this up, and I will say that had I not seen season 1, that the first episode of season 2 would confuse me no less than the first episode of season 1 did.
Fair,
I mean,
yeah, it's look, man. Like, let's even go further back than that, because it seems like the first season of Legion is a very derisive show, right? There are people who absolutely hate this show. I mean, hate it. Just look at IMDb user reviews and see how much they hate it. Then you have the people on the other side of the spectrum, where they're like, well, you have to be really intelligent to love this show because blah, 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 blah. And so you have basically what you have is you have this conversation happening with the first season specifically. You have this conversation going back and forth of, this is a boring show. It's tedious. It loves itself so much, that sort of thing. And the fight keeps going back and forth. Then we go to season 2, where they go, oh, you called us pretentious before. Well, we had another gear on this truck. Now you're going to see what pretentious is. And I can't help myself. I love this show so much. It is so weird and insane. Yeah. And I can't help myself. Over and over again, it happens where I'm watching the show. I have no idea what I'm watching, but it's interesting to me. The visual storytelling, are they going to put it all together at some point? Maybe. I have no idea, but I love watching it.
And I'll go so far as to say that the storytelling is only icing on the cake. It is something to be experienced. It's a visual experience, a little bit of an auditory experience. I mean, I've come around 180 degrees. I don't know if you guys remember how I felt about the very first review we did, and then I came around on the second one. I'm really into it now that this is our third time coming back to this show. But you sent a text to us, Sean, that actually made me come up with a valid question for you guys. Where do you guys come down on David Lynch?
I'll let Sean go ahead.
I cannot stand David Lynch. I think that he is a great director, but his movies are weird for weird's sake. And with the exception of A Straight Story, which I think is just a masterful movie. It is terrific if you've never seen it. Bruce, do you know the movie I'm talking about where the guy...
I know the movie, but I haven't seen it. But I very much know the movie.
It's so good. And
it's like a guy rides a lawnmower, right?
To go see his brother.
Yeah.
And it is so masterfully done that like over and over again, you just say to yourself, how is this the same guy who completely screwed Dune? You know what I mean?
Well, my impression, the reason I asked you guys, and I'll let you ring in just a minute, Adam. But for me, and if you really are a big fan of David Lynch, you may not like what I'm about to say, but this show to me seems like what David Lynch wanted to do but couldn't. Like this
Agreed.
is accomplishing what he strived for and missed.
I agree, and I get I get that I'm kind of dancing on the raggedy edge here with my comments because this is weird for weird's sake also. But this show specifically has everything that I hate. It's got it's got a million different dream sequences in it, which I hate. It's got weird for weird's sake, which I hate. There's no through storyline, seemingly. I hate that too. And yet, there's something about this show, specifically this show, where I just can't stop watching it. Because over and over again, are they going to get even weirder than the last thing we saw? Yep, they sure are. They're going to go further and further and further crazy and further pretentious. And everything has like, what is he trying to say here? Like that happened to me no less than 3 times watching these 2 episodes, where it's just like, what are they trying to convey? What are they trying to tell me here? And I love that happens.
For about 10 years, I'd say between the age of 20 and 30, I used to really, really like David Lynch. And then at some point, I started to see directors who were influenced by David Lynch, but who were actual film directors. Because if you know David Lynch's background, he never had any plans to become a film director. But when I saw people that were influenced by David Lynch, but maybe more talented storytellers, then I started to not like David Lynch as much when I saw what the next generation was bringing to the table. So that's why I asked that question. Where do you come down on it, Adam?
Gentlemen, right, you absolutely are. 100%. It's
good.
I think David Lynch is a talented guy. I don't think he's a good director. I'm sure he's a very lovely person. From all accounts that I've heard from people, I've heard he's very nice. But this, no, I'm not a fan. He can put out some stuff that's good looking, but you'll try to piece some things together. And overall, it doesn't work. And even stuff that's a little bit more straightforward narratively, like Blue Velvet and stuff, still is just why are you just letting everyone just chew scenery so disgustingly so? And it's nothing that I'm a fan of. And yeah, weird. It's weird for weird's sake, and not in a good way.
And he gets 2 types of actors on all of these shows. I mean, the reason why Kyle MacLachlan works so well in Twin Peaks is because he is one of those actors who doesn't need a director to tell him, you should behave this is what you should be doing in this scene. He just knows what he's doing, and that's why he works so great on that show. But the problem is you either get someone like a Jada Pinkett Smith who's like, oh, I gotta be crazy right now.
Yeah.
Or you get someone that it looks like he found them at a truck stop and put them in his movie.
Yeah.
And it happens over and over and over again with him. And so you have these actors who are basically Alan Rickmaning it like crazy, just chewing scenery and just destroying everything around them with their great performance. And then you have someone who may not have spoken an actual word of the English language standing right next to them. And that's and to me that is jarring and off-putting. I get why people like it. I really do. I mean, I understand that. But he does not seem like a performance-based director by any means, and maybe that's the difference. Maybe I'm talking myself into this here. Noah Hawley loves great performances, and he loves good people, and so he plugs in these people that work for for what he's working on, because whether you have somebody like Dan Stevens or Aubrey Plaza or Bill Irwin, and I love Bill Irwin, and
I love this cast,
and I don't know how many. I don't know if that was a choice, but how many actors can do what Bill Irwin is pulling off on this show? Not many. I mean, just think of it think of it like this, man. When they're and not to go too far ahead, but when they're in the middle of that dance sequence and he's got to plug plugs into holes and like flipping buttons and stuff, and he's dancing at the same time as he does it, like. It looks like he is affected. He's being affected by the music instead of just playing along. And I guarantee you, a lesser actor is going to play that like, oh, I just really like this. I really like this music too. He is entranced by what is happening, what he's hearing, and I think that is an amazing performance. And you were never going to get that in a David Lynch movie.
And I found all the dancing in that first episode so much fun, in part because Bill Irwin's dance moves looked like they really could have been choreographed by me, first off. And then they even get sort of the faux dance battle going down in the psychedelic dance club in the psychic realm or the astral plane that they're at. I mean, just so much fun with the dancing. And at the same time, this is a show that you could say, perhaps you could make the argument it's a little pretentious and maybe takes itself too seriously, while simultaneously poking fun at how sometimes modern dance can be a little pretentious. I mean, it's just working on so many levels for me, those dance scenes.
Yeah.
I have to admit, man, I got up and danced along.
And it keeps happening. Like, it's just an embarrassment of riches with this show. For me, I totally understand why some people hate this show. I totally and utterly get it, but it is surprising over and over and over again, and to the point where it's still not like the guy who made the first Batman, the
Burton?
'89 Batman,
Tim Burton.
Tim Burton. He is not at the point yet where Tim Burton is doing an impression of a Tim Burton movie. But he's still at the point where he still has enough fresh ideas, and that writer's room has enough fresh ideas where they keep coming at you with new stuff. And one of the things that my jaw hits the floor because I knew that they would be out of the mental hospital, because they would have to be at this point, right?
Yeah.
But so I was like, how are they going to top the set of the mental hospital? Well, I'll tell you how they fix that. They have a restaurant on campus that they all eat in, where the trays come gliding by on water.
Yeah, and I love it.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? When I saw that, I was absolutely floored, because two things have to happen for that set to exist. One, you have to have a production designer who knows enough of their stuff to know that this is going to work in the show. And two, you have to have a showrunner who has enough cojones to be able to go, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. Let's have the floating menu float by them as they're talking. Are you kidding me?
I love it.
Kidding me?
Hey,
it's amazing.
Well, it's a Japanese steakhouse.
I also love the decision to have an elevator that's as large as a conference room.
That is also true.
Yeah, come on, Bruce. You've been in medical facilities. You've seen the size of some of them elevators.
Nothing like that, man. But it's also the easiest effect to do, man. You just need the screen in the back to have the moving image while they're sitting in the set.
Throw a little blue in there.
Clever.
There we go. All of a sudden, hey, look at the size of this elevator, boy.
I love it. It'd be a good stage production.
And I do have to say, my there's a couple of things that I can ding this show for. But the biggest disappointment for me was at the cliffhanger of season 1. And at this point now, if you're listening just to listen, and like you're like, I'm not going to listen to that show, or I'm probably never going to watch that show, just in case, there's spoilers ahead here. So at the end of season 1, it looked like Mojo was coming for Legion, and what a massive disappointment to learn that it's still Shadow King. Don't get me wrong, I love the character of Shadow King. I love what they're doing with him. But just how insane this show would be with a Mojoverse, are you kidding me?
Hey, we're only 2 episodes in, and there's this threat that's been hinted at. This threat larger than the Shadow King.
And you did see, like, at one point we find Aubrey Plaza is the one that comes in there, but we see like this set of eyes that we had seen previously for half a second. So like your mind quickly goes to that, and then it's her coming through the darkness. So I feel like they may not be done with it.
And and also I don't know. I guess this is where it's appropriate to say, but Sean, you know the effect that Kristen Ritter has on you.
I do.
I think Aubrey Plaza does that for me.
I'm right there with you, buddy.
It's about the eyes. I mean, my life is devoted to eyes, and she's got 2 of them.
She got 2 of them eyes, boy.
But no, her eyes are striking, man. There's no way around that.
I like a big set of eyeballs.
She does something for me, and she's got maybe has a good sense of humor. I saw her play Dungeons and Dragons with Dan Harmon, and she's pretty good at
it. So what do we think of Dan Stevens this year? How do you guys think he's doing so far?
Every time I see Dan Stevens, I'm more and more impressed, because in between Legion Season 1 and Legion Season 2, I saw him in The Man Who Saved Christmas, or Man Who Invented Christmas. And
that's where I was going.
And dude is like, and again, he's an English actor, and, you know, I'd seen him in some other stuff previous to Season 1. But boy, you don't know it, and it's never one of those things. But he has to do so much with what I'm sure is minimal sort of direction. We're going to do all kinds of weird and crazy stuff. Just buckle up, strap in, and you're good to go. I got nothing but praise for that guy, because he has to do a lot with not saying a bunch.
And I'll just say that I think I may mention this to you back during the holiday season, Adam, but I can see a universe in which David Haller and Charles Dickens, the way the character was portrayed in The Man Who Invented Christmas, are indeed the same person. I could see that movie being in the canon of this show.
Yeah, if you put some more acid trippy music in it, man, you could pull that off.
Well, and it wouldn't be the first time that's happened on a TV show, because weirdly, this is very weird. This is a very weird reference, especially for the show. But Friends did this with Phoebe's twin sister.
Oh,
yeah. I know all about it, man.
So weird. I love Dan Stevens. I want to see him in everything now. I think that he is an incredible talent. He has that thing, too, where you just want to watch him. And he is, for some reason, he's cool but not awesome. You know, like he seems like just a guy. And
he does neurotic really well.
He does, but it's a type of neurotic where it's like, man, that's kind of like me, you know. Like it's not a neurotic where you're like, man, like this
that guy needs help.
It's not Chandler from Friends. It's an entertaining neurotic,
right? And you know, he could have because he had a really tough job season 1 where look, this guy is suffering from mental illness. And he could have gone a completely different way with it than the way he did. And it's just so good. And he keeps going. Like he has no idea what's going on right now. Like he doesn't have an anchor in the water and know where he's headed. Like the character himself doesn't know that yet. And I love it. And
I'm going to go ahead and just throw this out there that whenever they make the Sean Keenan biopic, the Sean Keenan movie, I think it should star, our own Dan Stevens as Sean's good buddy Bruce.
What a turn! What a turn! Oh my goodness! I have never seen a fake out and low these almost 4 years worth of podcasting that was worthy of that. Good on you, Bruce. Holy smokes!
The only thing I would change about that, Bruce, is that Dan Stevens with James Earl Jones's voice.
Oh, that's even better. Now, honestly, I want the guy that plays Oliver to play me. I like that cat.
Is Nell Carter still alive? We talked about that on this show.
Yeah, give me a break.
That talent is no longer with us.
No.
I do like. I don't know if it's in the first episode. Yeah, I think it's still in the first episode where they give the idea of delusions. And I will say that I have limited education in psychiatry, but more than your average person. I got an A, did a few months of it. And the whole idea of the sort of the foreign limb syndrome that the guy happens, and they show him eventually sawing off his own leg, and their descriptions of delusions, they work really well for me on a clinical level. Like I think that they honestly have someone who understands what they're doing guide them in some of their philosophy and psychology and their understanding of some of those terms, which is nice considering we've watched David Goyer movies where they can't even be bothered to like call their local ER on the phone and ask, what's the name of this medicine.
But at the same time, didn't you tell us at some point, probably off mic or something, about like there's some sort of deal with people that like think that they're blind or like have bad vision?
Yeah, that's conversion disorder.
Yeah.
But the guy who's convinced that his leg isn't his leg, and their explanation of delusion and the difference between a true idea and a delusion, they're both equally real to the person who has that idea. It's all pretty cool, down to the point where they say that humans are the only animal that goes mad. That's not true because there is something called mad cow disease, right, guys?
Yeah, and those mad cows, I tell you what, they get so frustrated it's like falling down, but with cows.
Yeah.
And what are you and what are we supposed to believe about Wolverine, if that's the case?
He's just angry. He's not mad. Now,
where to go?
Well, how about this idea? He runs into Sid from the future, and it's got a lot of unexplained things here that could either be paid off as the season goes on, or they could just be left as hanging threads the way this show goes. But she's missing an arm, right?
Yep.
And she tells him that he actually needs to help the Shadow King because in her timeline, David destroyed the Shadow King and something worse came along. And we don't know what that something worse is, but it's, kind of hinted that the Shadow King isn't the real villain of this season. Something else is going to be around. We've got these people that are frozen with chattering teeth and no explanation. And I think the question in my mind, particularly the way that Sydney doesn't just come out and tell him what's worse, is the worst thing to come actually David Holler?
That's a good guess. But I'll say this. First of all, chattering teeth, especially amongst all these people, oh my gosh, how scary. It's just, there's something about it that's just like, very unnerving. A room full, like, first of all, chattering teeth in itself, like, really off-putting and, like, no, that shouldn't be happening. And then you have a whole giant room full of them, wildly scary. I don't like it.
When I wake up first thing every morning, my teeth chatter for 30 straight minutes before I can go to
work. That's a really cold shower. But I think with all that kind of good, I love that idea. But and I thought that was a great psychological kind of exercise at the same time too. You go to the future, and let's say you find, we know of someone who is going to kill, 1,000 people. Obviously, 1,000 people is pretty awful. No one wants to see anyone kill 1,000 people. But we have, in order to, save probably, let's say, 1 million people, we should have to let that 1,000-person, murderer live, because we have, bigger fish to fry, so to speak.
Yeah,
that's an interesting thought experiment.
And what about
on top of it to kind of finish that thought of the future and there's a bigger batter? We don't even know if that's just the Shadow King screwing with everybody.
Yeah,
we don't even know that.
That's correct. It totally could not be her at all.
Right.
Yeah. Or it could be David, man, because David's mind is fragmented. He's called Legion in the comics because he has the psyche of 300 people stuck inside of him and, dissociative identity disorder and that sort of thing. So who knows? I mean, I kind of have this suspicion that it's some kind of side effect of whatever David has been through in the past year that is causing these chattering teeth people to exist. That's my working theory at the moment. And I guess we ought to talk about the guy that has a wicker basket for a head, Admiral Fukima or something like that.
Oh my gosh, that's straight out of a Japanese video game right there.
When we first see the Vermilion, which I know we're going to speak at length about here in a little bit, I literally thought to myself, well, that's about the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And then he steps forward, and I was like, nope, I'm wrong. wicker basket on head guy. That's the weirdest thing we've seen so far.
Do you want to know what my first impression of the Vermilion was?
Yes.
I never knew that Mr. Rooney's face on Sloane's body could be so strangely arousing. Because for some reason, the face with the mustache kind of looks like a young Jeffrey Jones to me.
The body is saying Sloane. The face is saying the Sausage King of Chicago.
And you know, I am not the one to ever want to use this term, but when it comes to the Vermilions, I think it's okay to say Butterface.
And it's funny because when you look at the IMDb cast list, all three of those ladies are very, very attractive ladies.
Well, of course.
And so they are doing a very, very good job in hair and makeup over there.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think they eat lunch like that?
They have to.
Oh, you know they do.
I know somewhere there's a man, and that's CGI, man. That just looks too manly in the face. Like, that is a CGI. You know, it's like that deep fakes kind of technology they're using there.
Yeah, he looks
where
like
they can put
body or something.
I think they got a young Jeffrey Jones. I really do.
Yeah, it's like every little bit you're just like, what are we? I don't feel right. None of this feels right at all. It's just like I just got to. The show's over. Go take a shower because you're dirty.
Oh man.
So that character is cut out of whole cloth as well, then, and it's just not. It's not a deep dive into the X-Men lore.
There is no wicker umbrella basket headed character that I could find who is an admiral, because the Navy doesn't seem to care if you have a wicker basket on your head.
Well, I think it's like Captain Crunch, you know.
Just a
self-appointed admiral.
Right.
Rear Admiral Crunch.
Oh man, could I just start calling myself Commodore Leslie?
Hey, why not? Rear Admiral
Crunch. If you don't look, I'll make that stick if you want me to start calling you the Commodore. I totally will.
I'm pretty sure Commodore Vanderbilt just self-proclaimed himself a Commodore. Like, it's one of those things that sounds like a thing, but I don't think it's an actual thing. Like, it's like a squire at the end of your name. You can just do it if you want to.
You're like Commodore 64, Leslie there.
Yeah. Bill S. Preston Esquire, Commodore of the Navy.
The third. It's like, there's 3 of those? My God, that seems like an awful lot.
But yeah, the Admiral with the wicker basket for a head. I love it, too, that they ask enough so that you realize that they understand that this guy has a wicker basket on his head, but they don't ask as much as they should.
Yeah, like, how bad does that stink in there? Oh.
I like the idea that he was just looking for something. It got stuck, and he's afraid to take it off. Like, he's not doing that intentionally.
I planned it this way. No, you shut up.
One of his contact lenses fell out and into an umbrella stand, and he stuck his head in there to get it, and then he can't get it off because he has large ears.
I had acne bad enough in high school where I would have been willing to try that at one point. Wicker basket.
Oh, man.
You seen that new Wicker Kid?
I do like the voice modulation on the Vermilions.
Yes, me too. It is such a, like, just time and time again, they just punch you in the stomach of, like, look, you think you know what's going to happen here and you don't. Bam! You know, in episode 2 of this, when they're all riding to the location, and it's the 3 Vermilion and then our 3 characters, and they're just kind of staring at the Vermilion,
just sitting across.
And they don't know what to make of it either.
Yeah.
You know, like, I love that the characters within the show know how weird all of this is. It's so cool, man.
I also like the little thought experiment that they show where Oliver convinces a kid that the color red is actually the color green and vice versa.
I love
and
that
then
stuff.
The kid looks like he's about 14 years old when he finally crosses the street and dies. That's a lot of work for not that good of a payoff. Like, it would have been easier just to, the day you wanted to kill the kid, to shove him out in front of traffic, if you ask me.
And what exactly is Oliver writing in that little notebook after the kid gets hit?
A grocery list. It's totally unrelated to what happens. He's like, oh, by the way, I need milk.
Subject cross streets, subject dead. Good.
I have a great idea for a poem.
But imagine all the work it takes, not only to teach this kid his colors wrong, but then to keep him in isolation from literally anything for 14 years. Not to mention that most 14-year-olds I know don't pay attention to the street light anyway. They just dart out in front of traffic.
What about that green stop sign? You're an idiot. That's not green. That's red, you dummy. And then, well, these days we'd put him into some sort of care, and they'd be like, oh, well, he's clearly got some sort of weird color blindness or something going on.
I would have loved it if the payoff was, after all that work, it turns out that the kid did have red-green color blindness, and he just thought everything was gray anyway, so he didn't argue.
He didn't know any better.
It's like 14 years of research wasted. I've got to start over.
That's why you have a control group.
And what about that black tar chick that comes out of the egg? That was kind of a cool effect.
Oh, so cool.
Oh, so
it reminds me of the Shadow King from last year, because the special effects of the Shadow King were so well done that it's like, oh, that's why they're saving it up.
Now, what do you think about Farouk? They give us, we sort of had 3 incarnations of the Shadow King. We had the Mojo-looking thing. Then we had the Shadow King who was sort of manifesting as Lenny before he took over Oliver. And now I'm not quite sure who Lenny is in this whole scenario. Yeah. And now we've got the actual Farouk, who I think this actor's kind of cool, man. He's able to deliver lines pretty fluidly in 3 different languages. I love him in the wrestling singlet for some reason, because the guy's clearly not a young guy. You know what I mean? I'm really kind of liking their casting has been excellent every step of the way, and I'm kind of liking Farouk, though I do miss the really gross looking fat dude.
Well, do you think you're going to see more of that version of Shadow King?
I don't think so, man. I think that was first season's little present. I think it'll be something different this season.
Yeah, me too.
Let's talk about let's talk about a new thing that's added on to this season. A narrator, one Mr. John Hamm, coming in there and kicking down doors. I don't know, but I love it.
It feels to me like it's something where they're going to stop doing it. Just because they need to introduce you into this insane world in the first place. Like, I think that they'll probably ease off on that, and maybe at the end of the season wrap it back up and bookend it with a John Hamm narration at the end. But I can't imagine that they're going to keep doing that every episode.
I like it because it works to me. It helps with the through line for everything to make everything just kind of stack up and make sense. And, of course, with this show itself, the show as a whole, right? The first episode of season 2 is the next chapter. They're not necessarily even calling it, season 2, episode 1. Each one is the next chapter, and even within said chapters, episodes, there occasionally are chapters within that itself. It's like a Michael Crichton book. That's right. I've read a couple of books. Shut it. But that's it's cool like that.
And I don't know, made me want to buy the world a Coke. Isn't that how the Madman ended?
It did. He invented that.
I always get Mad Men and Mad Max confused, so I'm sorry if I got the wrong one.
One has subtitles and one doesn't.
Gotcha. Was he D.B. Cooper all along? Is that what we're supposed to think?
I only watched half of first season. I liked it.
Okay, that was a theory, man. That Don Draper was D.B. Cooper.
Man, that'd be great.
Would have been.
I hope so.
Well,
I'm going to make my fanfic.
So where do we think they're going? Like, where is this season headed? Do you think that we're going to see Mojo? Do you think that they're going to go with a different big bad? What do you think?
I don't think we're going to see Mojo now. They had their chance to do it, and I think they went a different direction. Bill Irwin's character was investigating the sphere that came and took David away at the end of last season, and kind of determined that Sid built that, but maybe future Sid built it and sent it back to take David out of the picture for a little while because she wanted to stop him from killing the Shadow King or something. I think if Mojo was involved, that's where the connection would be. So I think they've burned that bridge, but I could be wrong.
Well, so who do you think then? Do you have any idea?
Well, question number 1 is, do you think this is the last season? Because I've gotten the idea that this is probably the last season. Mm-hmm. I think Dan Stevens is too big for them to get a third season.
I don't think he's quite there just yet. I think he's on his way to being. I think they could get at least one more out of this. And
Noah Hawley, man. I mean, he's going to make movies. You know, like he's got like 3 or 4 projects coming up here.
Season 3, they recast Dan Stevens and they hand the reins over to Goyer. So this is the last season I'm going to watch. We'll just say that. But if Holly is approaching this like the last season, I think David is the villain.
Oh man, that'd be great.
And that kind of lines up with the comics because Legion pretty much is a villain, no matter how hard people try to keep him good. But I think he is the one who is the bigger entity to be feared than the Shadow King.
He's the Rainmaker.
Yeah, that's right. Because I don't think the Shadow King, as powerful as the Shadow King is, I don't think he can do some of the things that are happening here.
Oh, I see. What about you, Adam? What do you think?
That's the best part about this. Is that I turned on the show and I'm just like, I got no idea what this is. I don't know where we're going. But frankly, I love the ride. And I do love how, like, when we finally get David into the old little isolation tank there and everything, we actually get what I'll call actual Bill Sienkiewicz's art, which is called one eye's big, one eye's tiny, and all kind of weird flipping proportions. And then you're just like, oh, you know what? You know, that's pretty much how he draws there. Just like a guy that's, you know, done a couple of toots and just is like, I'm drawing stuff. But yet at the same time, we like the guy he can put out really good looking stuff too, but some of the stuff is just like yowza.
And considering this character was
represented on screen is nice.
Considering this character was created by Chris Claremont, Chris Claremont never did anything with the kind of depth we're seeing in this show. So it's kind of cool to see the creation grow so far beyond its original intent, which is cool. But I wonder how Sid's going to get her arm chopped off. And like, not only is her arm missing, but it doesn't look like a good job was done fixing it. Like, it looks like there's a wire or something dangling from the stump. Did you notice that?
It does look like that.
So I suspect she finally couldn't stand it anymore and tried to take that wicker basket off the Admiral's head, and he ripped her arm off.
I got to tell you, I don't want it to end. I don't want this to be the last season, but I think you know, if you're really reading the tea leaves here, we're not going to get a third season of this.
Look,
but
season 2, first episode, 1.62 million for a show on
I'm
FX.
not talking,
not bad.
Buddy,
yeah, this isn't about the ratings.
You
know what I mean?
It has
everything.
to do with the creators themselves. But I mean, you know, there's so many other things I'd like to see done on the show. Like, can you imagine if Legion was going up against Cameron Hodge or something like something weird like that? Like, God, that'd be great. Man,
that would be good.
Mojo. I mean, there's a million weird X-Men villains that he could go up against, and it would just be so lovely. Danger Room. Like, oh, come on, get out of here.
And though I don't think it would happen because it's been burned by the movies already, but something in the world of Apocalypse would be interesting. Or a great character that I just don't think that Fox and Marvel are going to let come to this show, but Onslaught would be the perfect sort of thing.
Oh, man, he would.
But it would be like a take on Onslaught. Instead of being Magneto and Professor X, it would be the Shadow King and David Haller kind of combined together to make this Onslaught character.
Oh, that's great.
Hey, man, word on the street is come about this time, maybe in summer of 2019, the deal with Fox and Disney may be gone down. So who's to say what's going to happen after that point? Everything may be, you know, up in the air. Crazy town. I don't know.
Truth.
But we will we'll rejoin this here program as it wraps up and everything. So you know, don't worry, we got more on your plate. But before we do that, though, we do have to figure out, and it's a heck of an ask, but we got to find out how this program relates to one Sylvester Stallone.
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Now, I know that everyone can agree I have a perfect and flawless Russian accent, but the truth of the matter is some people aren't as lucky as I am. When people aren't talented like me, they turn to a dialect coach, and that dialect coach is Coley Calhoun. Coley Calhoun is the dialect coach on Legion and has been working as a dialect coach since way, way back. If you can really go far, far back, 2009. She worked on a short film called Ela and the Moon, which sounds mysterious and ephemeral. What sort of relationship does the moon have with this person named Ela exactly? Are they bank robbers? Because I hope they're bank robbers. And the cop chasing after the moon and Ela is none other than the son from the Kellogg's Razor Brand box that's holding the 2 scoops. Because anybody can tell you there's 2 scoops of raisins in Kellogg's Razor Brand.
Fresh, juicy raisins.
I would ask Kellogg's to sponsor the podcast, but the second we land the Kellogg's account, Adam would then start complaining on air about having to do ads for Kellogg's, and he would start using terms like punk rock and beholden to no one. Anyway, Coley Calhoun was bouncing around from job to job, and then one day she landed the dialect coach job for a movie called A Walk Among the Tombstones, starring Liam Neeson. But the person that starred in that movie, that is an actor that goes by the name of Dan Stevens, also worked on that movie. And Dan Stevens happens to play the titular character on the show Legion. Now, she would soon become Dan Stevens' dialect coach for every job he was in that required him to have an American accent. She also worked on a couple of the Marvel Netflix shows, but the biggest project she's worked on as of this recording is the 2015 movie Creed. She was the dialect coach for former Stallone connection Richie Coster back in episode 196, where we reviewed the first half of the season of the TV show Happy. Now, nothing spectacular went down in that episode, but without listening to it, I'm guessing Bruce referenced Watchmen, I referenced myself, and Adam tried to read an email, then blamed the emailer for poor grammar.
All these things are true.
Creed is one of those movies that does the job it's supposed to, which is continue to make Rocky movies until Sylvester Stallone decides he doesn't want to make them anymore. I don't know when that will be, and I don't know if Stallone himself knows when that'll be. But if I were him, I'd continue making them about 20 years after I was dead. Sort of like a Rogue One deal where people say things like, Andy Serkis plays a better Rocky than Rocky. Anyway, that's this week's Stallone connection. Coley Calhoun. Now, lady with mustache and the Commodore, let's review the first 2 episodes of Legion, if that's something we're interested in doing.
Here's the thing.
Nailed it again.
I think I know where all those hacks were coming from, man. I think they were coming from the Keenan household. Oh, my goodness. I thought Mr. Putin was right here in the office. I don't know what's going on, man.
Go to Branson, Missouri. You could be the next Yakov.
This will shock you. My 85-year-old grandpa loves Branson. Loves it.
Hey, man, everybody needs a playground, bro.
Yeah, no kidding. So we'll forego rating the whole thing. I'll just say this: the season is back to what I kind of wanted it to be. It's wild, it's crazy, it's wacky, it's over the top. I don't know what to expect, and that is something that will keep me coming back week after week. John?
I love this show. You guys know I do. It's one of my must-watch shows. I cannot get enough of it. I hope they continue more of this madness. I hope I don't see what's coming. I hope they always leave me guessing for the rest of the season. And that's as far as I'll go with it, and I won't rate it so far.
Yeah, we'll get you at the end. And of course, Bruce, what are you thinking?
Man, it's just a nice, fun, atmospheric show. I really dig it. I dig what they're doing. I'm grateful to this podcast because I wouldn't have stuck with this show and I wouldn't enjoy it like I do now were it not for the podcast. So thanks, guys, for keeping me honest on this one.
So what you're saying is Sean and I are both heroes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought
the kind of heroes that I hope my kids never look up to.
Yeah,
it is called Hero Movie Podcast.
Fair enough. You know what I'm saying? Well, that is it. This week we'll pick it up, a little bit later on there for the end of Legion and all that kind of good stuff. However, next week we have a mission. You remember earlier in the program where I said you go over to patreon.com/HMP and vote on what we watch and all that kind of good stuff and help support the program? Well, guess what? When you hear this bad boy, we are going to have a vote up there for you. And let me tell you, the choices, bit of a doozy. See what you guys think of these. We got Man-Thing. Yeah, that's right. Surrogates, Barbed Wire, Dr. Giggles, and Ginger Dead Man. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because
let's go Ginger Dead.
We had good stuff last week. We had good stuff this week. Chances are the week after this with Avengers, I'm just gonna say chances are we're probably gonna like that. We need a little bit of a palate cleanser in between. We need something that just makes us go, ugh, gross, disgusting, and then go in and have something nice afterwards and just go like, isn't this lovely? Isn't it nice? So you can vote on that by going to patreon.com/HMP and voting, man. Doesn't matter if you're in for $1 all the way up to the executive producer of $20 a month. You get to vote on that, man. And we really appreciate that. So do that. In the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet, sir?
I'm always directing people to my books on Amazon, Amazon.com. You can look for all of them. In particular, if you like this podcast, you'll probably want to check out Nerdspawn Genesis, the absolutely true-to-life work of fiction about the three of us and a superpowered kid named Lil Steel and a bad guy called Man in Bear Suit. And I just don't want to spoil it all, but you're going to hate yourself if you don't read that book. And maybe in the next couple months, I hope I have something that's a big deal to me to talk about. Can't talk about it yet, but stay tuned.
Ooh, Mr. Keenan.
Find me at doggypod.com. Also, you can go to Twitter, Hero Movie Sean, and maybe I'll get on there. I don't know. I'm busy. I'm super, super busy. I'm in the industry, everyone. I make movies and TV shows all the time. And also, much like Bruce, I hope that I have a neutron bomb of news once I've cleared the NDA, if I have to sign one. I would really, really, really love to be able to do that. But we'll see. Anyway, find me doggypod.com.
You can find me on the local news. Who knows what I've done? News at 11.
Crime Busters at your local gas station.
Check it out, everybody.
He wasn't quiet. He wasn't quiet, and he did not keep to himself. We all saw this coming.
The writing was really there on the wall.
You know, in retrospect, it really is our own fault.
I was totally shocked to hear the news because it should have happened years ago.
It was kind of incumbent upon us to say something, but we didn't. But, of course, you'd also might want to check out the Film Find at thefilmfind.com. We should have some good stuff coming up next week, including a review of the movie I think everyone should go out and see right now, Isle of Dogs. If you haven't seen it, if you love a dog, if you have a dog in your life, go see it. It's fantastic. So we'll be doing that, man. Check that out. That is it, everybody. Join us next week for whatever that Patreon select will be. Patreon.com/HMP. For Sean, Keenan, Bruce, Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie. Bye, Commodore.
Life could be a dream if I could take you up in paradise up above. If you would tell me I'm the only one that you love, life could be a dream. Sweetheart, hello, hello again. Shaboom, and open we'll meet again. Boom, ding dong, ding dong, a lang, a lang, a lang. Oh, 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 bip, a bip, a dip. Oh, life could be a dream if only all my precious plans would come true. If you would let me spend my whole life loving you, life could be a dream, sweetheart.
Every time I look at you, something is on my mind. If you do what I want you to, maybe we'd be so fine.
Oh, life could be a dream. Shaboom, if I could take you up in paradise up above. Shaboom, then tell me, darling, I'm the only one that you love. Life could be a dream. Sweetheart, hello, hello again. Shaboom, and hope we meet again. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, life could be a dream. Life could be a dream, sweetheart. Boom. Shaboom, if I could take you up in paradise up above. Shaboom, and tell me, darling, I'm the only one that you love. Life could be a dream. Sweetheart, hello, hello again. Shaboom, and hope we meet again. Boom, boom, boom. Ding dong, ding dong, a lang a lang a lang a lang a whoa, bip, a bip, a bip, a whoa. Her life could be a dream. Her life could be a dream. Do, 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 shaboom.